I'm Jamie O'Kane, CPA, Small Business Advanced Tax Planning and Compliance Extraordinaire, and this is the Abundant Beans Podcast, the podcast that takes my love for learning what makes people tick while digging into the good, bad, and ugly of small business ownership. We strive to give you the insight that only those in the trenches of being and working with entrepreneurs can provide. All right, today we are welcoming to the podcast Echo Huang. Echo is the founder and president of Echo Wealth Management and the author of Own Your Future. Echo left China at age 20 to cross the ocean with nothing but $800 and the hope of achieving the American dream. Her courage and dedication fueled her journey through the business world over the next 20 years, gaining experience working in financial planning firms of all sizes before venturing off on her own. Today, Echo helps the country's top executives and entrepreneurs take the complexity out of their finances, giving them the confidence to follow their dreams and achieve their goals. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me here today.
Absolutely. Echo is also a CPA, so we're gonna try to keep it high level, guys, but you never know.
I'm a recovering CPA, so
I always love how people are like, I'm a recovering CPA. Like it's like being an alcoholic or something.
because I changed my career path.
It's so funny because I don't know. I can't think of any other industry where people are like, I'm a recovering, warehouse manager or something. Nope. It's always a recovering CPA. That tells you
I have heard that from somebody, and then I just borrowed it. I know. Yeah, I am, because I still have CPA license, but I am not preparing tax return or doing auditing. So I have to kind of tell people that, no, I'm not what you think. I do something different now to help people manage money instead.
Yeah. One of the things I really work on, especially like on this podcast, and I'm on the Intuit Tax Council, and I talk with Intuit too. It's just like, we need to talk about what accounting professionals actually do more often, because people are very confused. We don't just do tax returns. Like there's a spectrum of services, from really that, nitty gritty data entry, payroll, to like really high level planning. So like, there's really a large spectrum. I mean, you will meet CPAs who have never seen a tax return in their life.
Exactly.
Like they don't even do their own, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
There's just a large spectrum of what we can focus on or what we do. And there's a lot of different designations too that do tax returns and don't do tax returns, and do like some states even have like chartered accountant things. I just,
Yeah. I think you're right. Probably similar in other countries too. They have different, designation for the accountants.
So yeah, I mean, just because you're a CPA doesn't mean you're a tax expert.
You're exactly right. Actually, even though I did tax return for 4 years, but that was 20 some years ago. So don't hire me to do your tax return.
A lot has changed since then, Echo.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. So Echo, what was your first job?
Well, I was born and raised in China. So in the city of Shenzhen, when I was, my family moved to the city of Shenzhen on the border of Hong Kong when I was 12. And I remember in the summer, maybe when I was 17 or 16, I worked in a factory doing the assembling of, the pantyhoses. Yeah. Imagine the pantyhoses production. I was just, standing there and package the pantyhoses. That was my summer job, and my full-time job, like a real job, after I finished my accounting diploma in China. I was 17 and a half, and I started working for the Bank of China as an accountant. So that would be my like a full-time job, working for the Bank of China in Shenzhen.
My husband's in Shenzhen.
Hey, what did he say about Shenzhen?
He worked. He was there to do some manufacturing stuff. He's an engineer. He's a design engineer.
Yeah.
I don't know. He has mixed feelings. I mean, China is just so different than the United States that I think a lot of, like, he was there 3 times. And I think like the first 2 were just like shell shock, like culture shock for him. But I think he really, I feel like it's like his third trip. He like came home with stuff for us and like told us about the food. And I was just like, okay, you're a little like, he like kind of was like, okay, he knew what to do.
Shenzhen is very different. When we moved in there in the 80s, population was about 100,000 people. And now if you talk to people in Shenzhen, they are saying somewhere like 17 million people. So Shenzhen is the poster child for the opening up policy in China, and the city completely transformed, looking very similar to Hong Kong, probably surpassing Hong Kong. And so I went back several times in the past 20 some years. I was shocked. Yeah, even the recent trip, I brought my daughter back there. So for her first trip, after visiting 5 cities in China, Shenzhen was the last stop. And she told me Shenzhen was her favorite city in China. Awesome. From her perspective, it's very clean, very modern, and it's hard to imagine that many people living in such a huge city. And it was very organized and I would say high tech city.
Yeah, I want to go. Huh? On my list of places.
Oh yeah, of course, great food. That's a given. In a very diverse, I would say diverse city in China.
Yeah, we actually have we have a Chinese food restaurant right down here, and they have like a traditional menu.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so my
not
husband,
the Americanized.
They have both. They have both, right?
Yeah.
You walk in and it's like, your white people will give you the regular one.
Yeah.
But we always ask for the traditional one too.
Yeah.
Because there's always like families and like, off the traditional, like, and they're ordering off the traditional menu, obviously not, Americanized, but, there's actual, like, you can tell it's actually the traditional foods. But we were there one time. My husband's like, "Can I get a traditional menu?" Because he saw something on one of their tables. Yes. I can't remember what it was, but we always order it. No, we haven't been there for a while, but we always order off both menus because he's like, "This is really good," and it is, whatever it is. I don't even know what it is. I'm just like, okay, I'll eat anything, so I'm easy. And I'm like, I believe you. So tell us about your career journey and how you ended up in wealth management.
Wow. I know it's a long story, but I'm going to make it brief. Well, first, when I came to the U.S. as a foreign student, I chose finance major initially. I was always interested in banking, finance, and I started in University of Idaho in a little town called Moscow, Idaho, because my uncle was there doing research in chemistry, and he was the only person I knew at that time in the U.S. So I stayed with his family for a year, and then I found a scholarship to transfer to Winona State University in Minnesota, just a couple hours south from here, from the Twin Cities. And I was able to pay resident tuition as a foreign student, saving several $1,000s in tuition each year. And that was the main reason I ended up in Minnesota. I changed my major before graduation because my concern about job market. As a foreign student, I only had 12 months after graduation to look for a job. Otherwise, I would have to return to my home country without anything to show for. And so one of my professors told me that if you pass the CPA exam, you are pretty much guaranteed to have a job. And I still believe that is a true statement.
That's very true.
So I passed the CPA exam. I worked for KPMG. Pete Marwick at that time was one of the big 6 accounting firms in the world. In Minneapolis office. So my career path was like started in accounting because of the accounting major. I did auditing in financial services for 9 months. Oh, wow. I didn't enjoy that. After 9 months, I just didn't enjoy living in the hotel kind of lifestyle. Just remember, I was pretty young and I travel and I was on the road all the time. And I just didn't think that would be my long-term passion. And I was able to get a few interviews within KPMG. with partners in personal financial planning group that was under the tax services. And about 20 people in that group in downtown Minneapolis. And I was able to change my career and say, okay, I think I like the financial planning, like for personal financial planning, more than auditing financial statement. So I make that switch when in 97. I really enjoy the financial planning aspect of my job, and including tax planning for corporate executives and wealthy families. I became the senior tax specialist within 3 years. The part I didn't enjoy was tax season. I just decided, as you could imagine, I really couldn't take any time off from Valentine's Day to April 15th. After 3 tax seasons, I just thought to myself, can I make some kind of change in my career to do more of the financial planning and just get rid of the tax return preparation, but add more investment management, insurance, and do more comprehensive financial services. So I made a very critical decision in 2000 to leave the public accounting industry to become a financial advisor, at that time with a large firm called RSL McLeodry. Just to, as I said, I was paid as a salary financial advisor. So I was there for 3 years to help the CPA firm start the wealth management service with my boss at that time. Just 2 of us started something brand new in downtown Minneapolis for a very large CPA firm. It was a great learning experience for 3 years. And then in 2003, I decided to become a business owner. Just like any financial advisor, you have to find a firm that would accept you. And at that time, I chose LPL Financial. And at that time, it was a much smaller firm, unlike today. It was an independent financial services firm without its own proprietary mutual funds to sell. So I felt like, okay, I need to start somewhere. And that's how I landed in being a business owner on my own. I think I was 32 years old and trying to just figure out how I'm going to survive. Just being a financial advisor, especially, financial services, I think women, and especially Asian women, immigrant, I call myself like triple minority in my industry. I simply didn't have role models to follow at all. I would say, that was a critical change in my career. But I think what I really utilized at the beginning of my career was my accounting background and the skill set. Of course, I pay attention to cash flow. So this part was, doing auditing, we audit big companies' financial statement. We must look at cash flow, right? Cash flow is everything. And for personal side, and what I have learned was during the market crash in 2000, when I first got into the industry, many investors forgot the stock market. They could lose so much money in the stock market because they made so much money in the 90s without much volatility. So, but the dot-com boom obviously busted, and many people lost like 75% in NASDAQ because all technology stocks, were crashed. And so I utilize cash flow-based financial planning to help people understand on the personal side, their own cash inflows and outflows, and I project it out to age 90 or 95 so that they can visually see where they get the money to pay their bills for the next 5 to 6 years, for example. Because during market downturn, that's how long it takes the stock market to recover. So it was much easier if I actually convince them to allow me to prepare a financial plan for them, because financial planning was a very new thing in 2000. And, I think in my industry, most financial advisors at that time were mainly talking about diversification, asset allocation using mutual funds. So don't buy a few internet stock, let's just go for diversification. But that's not all of it. In order for investors to manage their emotions not to make the wrong decisions during market crash, right? Sell low and then buy high. We need to help them plan ahead using cash flow. That is much, I mean, to me, I think much easier way to build the trust through the financial planning process, because I ask so many questions about who they are, their resources and their goals and their, dreams and passions. Then when I custom build their financial plan, after it's done, they feel like I know everything about them. So I think as a 32 years old, I really, really value that experience of building the trust through financial planning versus selling a particular product. Because after the planning is done and I analyze the thing and present solutions, for example, to their problems, right? Help them solve the problems. The implementation side, it can be done with my assistants. If they trust me, I can manage the money for them proactively by opening accounts. But also, a lot of people have their money in 401k. They need people give them advice to manage the biggest part of their retirement fund. So that's why I think early on in my career, I started out with planning in mind, and then implementation is after. And then when they have the trusting relationship, I can be more proactive and effective in ongoing monitoring of their financial picture. And I really early on, I knew that was important. So even though I didn't have any minimum, in terms of opening an account, I just did my best to convince them. At that time, imagine early 2000, I just want them to go through the process. I was charging $500 to $750 for a financial plan.
Yikes. Not very much.
It was not much, but just imagine that. I think early on, people don't know what financial planning is. I think still today, that's what I'm coming on to your show to talk about.
Yeah. And you and I were talking.
People don't know. People don't know what it is. So when they ask you, oh, what do you do? I'm like, yeah, I'm a financial advisor. And just based on that description, most people will think of a couple things. One is, oh, you pick stock and bonds and trade in client portfolio. And the other one could be, oh, you're selling insurance. There are pretty much about two things that come to people's mind if you say I'm a financial advisor. But I think it's just so important for me, who believes in financial planning is a critical part of the service. And I intentionally break it apart. So investment management is separate from the financial planning. And I think over the years, let's just say fast forward, I was managing $20 million as a solo practitioner. And then after my daughter was born 16 years ago, I merged my practice with another small company in town. And I became a minority owner of that business for almost 1 decade. And then 6 years ago, now it's more than 6 years ago, I decided to leave that firm and start my own company, Echo Wealth Management, as an independent registered investment advisor. And currently my team and I manage $140 million for 81 clients. Most of them are Minnesota, but we also have many clients who move to other states and other countries. And so this is what I do now, is fully like embracing in-depth financial planning and customized portfolio management in-house to provide that seamless experience to our clients.
I love that so much. And a lot of what you talk about is how we do things, right? So we do things plan first. Yeah. What do you want? What are your goals? How do we get there? Let's create that relationship, that value up front. And then implementation is our next step as well. And I always tell people, after you place for the planning, you're welcome to take the plan somewhere else. I don't really care. Like, I just want to make sure we can save you as much in dollars as possible. We want to bring you through this process because on the back end, right? We know what you want. We know how to help you. We know what's happening going forward. We can advise you if you want to make moves or changes or things come up. But if we know where you're going, we can make better recommendations, which is exactly how you work.
That's why I think you and I are very much on the same page about,
Yes.
why people need to talk to a CPA if they don't need a tax return, or they think a tax return is part of it. So you definitely take that approach to, tax return is part of it, but that's not all of it.
We do that
So
last.
I have the approach of course, generating return is important to help you achieve your goal. There's no question you should be investing wisely, but that's not the only thing I do. And many people, of course, my long-term clients, as we reflect and say, wow, I have helped several clients planning for retirement in the past year. Imagine that, pandemic and everything, and people are pulling trigger and say, hey, this is my plan. It's work. That's right. Without planning, it would be scary for people to do that. But when we have a plan, we use the e-money advisor tool, and they are able to see their cash flow projection on their own board in their own portal, all the way the detail to age 95, and the values are updated every night. So of course, they anticipate some volatility, but with the right design, some investments should be able to pay for their 5 to 6 lifestyle, living expenses without selling the stocks at huge loss after market crash. So it's really important for me to introduce this concept to people and say, no matter how much money you have or how little money you have, financial planning is the first thing you need. And it's not just one product, it's a process, and it's ongoing because your goals can change and your financial situations can change.
It really is about the cash, right? And I always like to tell people, like, what would you do with your business if you had the cash? Where do you want to go? And how do we help you get there faster by tax savings, by tax strategy? Yeah. It really is very similar to what you guys do. And really at the end, it's just like, here's your ROA on your cash, spend money for us, but like, we've saved you this much and you can go put that towards your goals. And I say this all the time, but people are always like, well, how can I save taxes? Okay, but for what? What are you going to do with those dollars? Oh, you want to go expand, or you want to go do this, or you want to go do, okay, well, that's a purpose. That's a reason to tax plan. But like, just saving taxes isn't a goal.
You are exactly right. And you know what? The goals should be defined by that person individually, right?
Yeah. And then
that's why we are just there. Well, first, I think formalize, especially husband and wife. We, if they feel that there is a safe space to talk about it, they may not sit together, just talk to each other. Yeah. But it's good to be able to, provide that safe environment for both to talk about their own individual goals. And then so I can be the person and say, okay, based on what I have heard, these are your goals and the priorities. And then, use my professional judgment, experience, and the tools to present the, multiple solutions, right? Multiple ways to get to their goals. And in the end, they will provide feedback to me and say how to tweak this one. So it's very rewarding to be able to help people to initiate this kind of project, and then they own it. And then in the end, you'll come back and check on it and see what progress they have made. I think it's, for them, it's definitely motivating because, money is such a hard topic for anybody to talk about, especially when people don't have that financial education and confidence. Sometimes they don't know what questions to ask, and they don't want to sound like dumb, right? So it's always, I think, important to educate and inspire people to start financial planning and looking for the right financial advisor and wealth managers to guide them along the process. And of course, they need a team to help them, especially busy business owners who don't have much time.
I think you just spoke to like one of the biggest aspects of what like a proper advisor does. And part of that is like literally therapy.
Yeah.
Like we'll break it down, we'll repeat it, we'll make sure everybody's on the same page. It's like asking the questions, the hard questions, and making sure that, people are actually answering them for us. Because we can't, we got to get people on the same page. So a really good advisor who is doing some of that mental and energetic work for you is going to really help you figure out where you're going and how to get there.
Yeah. And also keep in mind that financial planning is complex, right? Because there are just so many variables in any projections. And I think for business owners or entrepreneurs who are so driven to do their best to drive the business and run a business successfully, on the personal side, they may not have the expertise and any experience to see this. But for experienced financial advisors, or for example, like what you do, if you have seen businesses, different situations many times, you have so many tools in your toolbox. And like me, if I have seen various complex situations and there are many ways to solve that, I think people come to us to make their life simple. So our goal is to take the complexity out of wealth management. So whatever I can do to bring, be able to see why it's complicated, but try our best to use the technology, as I mentioned, using Echo dashboard. And then when they can see cash flow, inflow and outflow like that, that's just, they don't have it, as a guide. How do I get to the day I can actually decide to sell my business? How much do I need to sell it for? And I feel like if I do the personal side correctly, they can get to that business sell decision much easier. Because first, on the personal side, we are doing enough questioning to find out their lifestyle, because we actually enter the living expenses as detailed as possible. We can customize it for a different stage of life too. And then once we reflect that, we can help them calculate how much they really need in a portfolio in order to generate enough return for the rest of their life. And if they have legacy goals, we could build that in to, pass on certain assets to either loved ones or charities. So I think with that clarity, business owners will be able to make better decisions on the selling side. And also do the better tax planning. Because they can actually know how much they really need for their personal lifestyle.
I always say, like, if we don't know what a client wants, we can't make suggestions, right? Like I work, and I've talked about this a couple of times, but I have a mentor that I work with, and he was like, so he was like, how do we save this guy money? The guy's real estate. He wants to buy more real estate. He's like, I'm thinking I'll have him put it in the SEP. And I'm like, you're going to have him put money in a SEP IRA instead of, he wants to go buy more real estate. Like, don't take his cash and put it in a place he can't get to it.
There are nightmare situations related to IRAs and dealing with the real estate that you are trying to manage yourself.
Because the tax savings on that doesn't work towards his goals, right?
Yeah.
So if we know where the client wants to go, we can help them get there personally, professionally, whatever, because we've worked with them and their teams. They also have, wealth management, financial planners to make the business work for them. Right. So a lot of us have business owners. We know that the business runs us. A lot of the time.
Yeah, I remember that too. I think early on in my career, it was even harder, right? Because
it's so hard.
I was by myself initially.
And it's like, we got to do everything. We got to do emails. We got to do billing. We got to do this. We got to do that. We got to, go get the mail. We got to, we got to do all these things.
Yeah.
But if we're using our business as a means to an end, which really our current generations are really like see more now, like it's not just, I'm going to die at my desk. But if we're using our businesses to get us somewhere personally, then we need to know where you're going personally, right? And it's so funny because I get people all the time. I'll be like, okay, so what's your goal? And they're like, well, I'll keep all my dollars. Okay, but what for what personally? Like, what do you want? What are you doing? How are you going to do it? And they'll be like, oh, well, I'm going to sell my practice and I'm going to go, I want the vacation home here and we're going to do some other stuff here. And it's like, okay, you have a plan. How much do you need for that? Okay. So then I have like this much to work with in strategy.
Yeah.
Okay. But if you have the proper expert
Mhm.
who knows what to do and knows how to run your cash flows, right? Or save those cash flows
Exactly.
for you, then you
Yeah.
can say, here's my inputs, or we can say, what is your inputs? And we can say, here's what's important for you. Here's the strategies that are going to save you dollars, move you forward on these things.
Yeah.
But if we don't know that, then you're going to get generic advice. Like put your money in a SEP IRA or go buy a truck that you don't need on December 12th or December
Yeah.
31st and stick it in your driveway. Never mind potential repercussions if you never actually drive that thing for business.
That's a bad, obviously red flag. You don't even need a truck for the business.
Yeah, the generic advice isn't for you if you
Mm.
actually want to go someplace beyond generic, I guess. That's kind of where we're getting to. But I'll have people like call me. Should I buy a truck? No. Do you need a truck? Well, I have a newer car. Okay, but what do you need the truck for? Well, it'll save me tax dollars. Okay, that is the laziest tax planning that can ever happen.
Yeah.
Right? Let's go buy something to save tax money.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to save 30% on that dollar.
Not a good strategy.
Why don't you keep the dollar?
Because cash flow is just so important for business owners, right?
Mm-hmm. It is.
Every dollar, if it's not helping you grow the business or stabilize the business during pandemic, that is putting business at risk.
Yeah. And then we get in this cycle of like, okay, well, then we have to buy new equipment at the end of every single year because we've got to replace ourselves in this place where we're relying on that cash dollars savings. What? Stop the madness. So Echo, you focus on helping women in their financial success. What are some of your top tips for women to improve their financial situation?
I think for women, first, women need to realize that there are more obstacles for them to achieve financial freedom. And we all know that we don't, average women do not make as much as men, even with the same qualification. So I think number one tips is start saving and planning early in your career. Like, don't leave it to your future husband or Prince Charming to help you start planning. So I would say first thing is start saving as early as possible, especially when you start a job with 401k matching. Certainly do not leave any money on the table. Put in as much as you can to get the matching. And then if you're able to save more, I think for a lot of younger people, you need to take advantage of a Roth IRA when they can do it because it's tax-free. In the future, if you make a lot of income someday, you cannot do that anymore. So that's one thing. And then the second tips I have is for people, certainly look for the right people to guide you along the process. I think women in general are traditionally leave investment decisions to husband or other men in their lives. And they normally manage the checkbook, like paying bills. I highly suggest that women need to get a little bit more financial education. I'm sure we do not provide that in K to 12 in terms of understanding why you need to take advantage of magic of compounding and have basic principles of investing like dollar cost averaging, diversification, so that women can build that confidence in terms of even talking to a financial advisor about making the right decisions. And I think women tend to leave that to men, and I think that has to change. And I'm certainly hoping more people will start planning even with the right professional help. They should put, a married couple should really go to the advisor together so the woman's voice can be heard, because that plan is so critical, right? To have both people's input. And women are more likely to live longer than men. So at some point, you may just have to be in charge of your own financial future. So I think the earlier women start learning more about financial planning, investing principle, and having a trusted financial advisor or wealth manager to guide them through the process, is extremely critical because the financial world is getting more and more complex, and we want people to utilize the experts like tax CPAs, attorneys, to make sure you have the right proper estate documents, especially during pandemic right now. And women tend to be more concerned about long-term care. And that's where I also make sure that I review their situation. And if the long-term care insurance is one of the solutions, definitely need to bring that to the table for clients to consider, because the cost of care is just so getting so high right now. And a lot of people don't want to think about it. So as a wealth manager, I want to identify all kinds of risk and then suggest what kind of ways to mitigate the risk, right? So review the insurance, of course. For women, I think life insurance, disability insurance, and potentially long-term care insurance, and also work with trusted financial advisor and the estate attorney to put all the proper legal documents in place. Financial power of attorney, maybe set up trust to avoid probate, and you must have a healthcare directive. Is so critical. With a business, you need to work on succession planning. So this is not just for women, but I would say if women are not aware of all these risks, if the worst thing that could happen is the widow calls the wealth manager when the husband dies and there was nothing in place, and that would be very tragic, because as imagine business owners build their business value. You don't want a business to go on fire sale. And so that's why I think for women, my tips would be get more educated. And that's another reason I wrote a book, Own Your Future. It was released during pandemic last year in June. So in June 2020, the title is Own Your Future, One Woman's Story of Immigration and Financial Freedom. I wrote this book to educate and inspire more people to start financial planning, because personally, I cannot serve them as their financial advisor, right? Not every single person, but I believe that if I can write a book to share my personal struggle and lessons learned, that was mainly the first two chapters, and then the rest of the book just go into every area of financial planning and showing clients that with the case studies for our clients, and so that they can kind of see what a fiduciary financial advisor does behind the scene to help people get to their goals sooner. So that's kind of like my passion right now. As I over the years, of course, I have continued learning. So after CPA, I got a certified financial planner before age 30. And then in my 40s, I studied for the Chartered Financial Analyst, that's CFA designation, focus more on portfolio management in-house. And so I can tell people that, the world is changing so quickly. So I would advise women to invest in themselves. Because regardless what job they are at right now, just keep an open mind and be adaptable and continue to invest in themselves to acquire new skill set. And in the future, I think they have more opportunities to earn more and also get to what I consider, work-life balance, when you have the freedom to make decisions on whether you need to work until 65 or not. I think starting early is always a good tip. Starting financial planning early, no matter what your situation is right now.
I mean, odds are you're going to outlive your spouse.
Yes.
Would you rather learn this stuff now?
Yeah.
Or 20, 30, 40 years from now?
It's a very scary situation.
It is a very scary situation.
I have seen widows who were completely lost, like didn't even know how to write a check, like writing checks. I never had to do that.
And it's really, it's hard. It's a hard transition to understand what needs to happen or even have an idea of what needs to happen and then trust somebody to help you with it. We have a client, she lost her husband. It's been a while. And I've been like, financial advisor, are you ready yet? Like every year in October, I'm like, I'll go with you. I'll go with you. We could do the thing. And it just took her a while to really feel comfortable with that. And that's fine. And I told her, I said, no decision is a decision. When you're ready, it's fine, you know. But she was very left adrift when her husband passed. And she knew she would be. But he handled absolutely everything. And it was hard. It was that compounding that, you know, putting that on your spouse, you know, men out there. If your wife doesn't know, if your spouse doesn't know how to log into your financial stuff and they don't know what's going on, that's a major burden you're putting on them when you leave them or if you die or whatever. Like, it has to stop.
I agree. One of my top clients came to me about 10 years ago. Was very financial savvy. He did everything himself to grow, very significant wealth. And I asked why you chose me. And he said, I just believe, the philosophy, we align in terms of make sure that I bring in the spouse into this whole discussion. So he said, I know that if I die, my wife feel comfortable, you know, knowing there is a plan in place. You just log online, you can see Echo dashboard, current balance sheet projected into the future and the cash flow. And, you know, I think for the men out there, just remember that the planning you do right now, it's worth so much more than just money. It's someday, how do you put a price on peace of mind, you know, for your family members, and could be for your spouse and your children or grandchildren. And same thing when I was talking to people about long-term care planning. And I said, right now, what you're doing may cost you several $1,000s. Remember, you got to work with an attorney and make sure you have the proper documents and everything. And I'm like, okay, long term, do you know how much, not just the cost of the estate administration, you know, just imagine all the pain people had to go through to settle the estate. Could be in multiple states when they don't put the property in the trust. And it's just like, I think I just tell them, I was like, why don't you just treat this several $1,000s as a gift to your children? You tell them during Thanksgiving dinner and say, hey, you know, we have done all this planning with our financial advisor and estate attorney and the tax CPA, and we have a plan in place to address the contingencies.
And you just go down the list and do the things.
Yes, I think I feel most fulfilling about my job is to reflect on the client situations when they first came to me and where they were. And now it's kind of like, well, you know, I've been in the industry for more than 20 some years, and be able to remember now they are moving into the next phase of life. So a lot of my clients initially were 40. Now they are in the 60 or close to 60. So it's really very rewarding to be able to see that. And then we are also helping their children plan for their future because of the trust that we have built. So I think in the long term, it's so important to spread the message of financial planning and building the dream team. The way I describe in my book, I have one chapter about building the dream team and talking about what kind of people, you know, the CPA and insurance agent and, you know, certain expert like business valuation expert to the table to help with the business succession plan and with the estate tax and gift tax changes on the horizon. It's even more important for them to come to the table and say, you know, Echo, if we don't do anything, we just pay 60% extra taxes for no reason someday down the road. So I think it's even more urgent for business owners to plan for that now.
I think that speaks to something I talk about all the time here, which is, build your advisory team.
Yeah.
Build your team of experts. It could be whatever. It could be your mentors. It could be your CPA. It could be your bookkeeper. Whatever. But if you're trying to do everything in-house, or you're trying to do everything with one person, you're going to miss out on stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to miss out on the expertise of the people who are experts in what they do. So you're going to get something mediocre instead of something stellar.
Yeah.
So really, I actually had somebody be like, well, I want to do my bookkeeping, and my payroll and my tax stuff. And then also, do you do like formation stuff and also financial advising? Like, they literally wanted to bring everything under like in-house. And I'm like, no, I'm a tax strategist.
Yeah.
That's what we do. We do also do bookkeeping because that's the easiest way for me to get the dollars so that I can strategize. Yeah. But beyond that, no. Because why? I would not. How would we keep up with all of that in-house?
Yeah. I think focus on what you are great at and outsource the rest. And that's what I have built a business too. I outsource technology, outsource compliance. I outsource marketing now. So I focus on more relationship building and on more advanced wealth planning strategies. And so that's where I believe clients, why they hire me. They don't hire me for tax return. I work with CPAs, so I can read the tax return very well. That's actually what I do every single time. I just read the tax return. I think it really helped me understand where they are. It just read the tax return and say, okay, I can understand where they have investments and what income they're getting. And
the tax return tells us a lot.
Absolutely.
It tells us a lot about what you've done in the past. It tells us a lot about what you got going on now. It tells us where you need to go in the future.
Yeah. I think that's
the ball sometimes.
Yeah. That is the advantage, I think, for you and me who understand the tax returns. You see what I mean? Because I know it seems, not a lot of people will actually read tax returns. But I do find it, interesting. I don't want to prepare it all day long. I don't want to do it all day long. But when we have a client who comes, that's why we always ask for a copy of tax returns, because sometimes people don't know what to tell you about their own stories. But the tax return, what I have, it adds another layer of color that may not just come out of their mouths, right? Because sometimes we just have to ask the right questions to get the answers, right?
Yeah. Tax return tells us if you're charitable or not.
Yeah.
The tax return tells us if you value other experts. The tax return tells us a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. Which makes what we do extremely different from the person who data entered your tax return, because for them, it's just numbers in a form.
Yeah. See, strategies is what they want. Yeah. We want a story. We want just to know deeper about what their goals and what their motivations are. And then figure out what can we do now to plan for their future. And definitely quite different than data entry or just fill out the forms on during tax season.
I love, and I know you do this too, but I ask clients to tell us where they spend how they spend their lifestyle dollars. And I always say, I don't care how much you spend on designer cat food. It's like even on the website. I don't care. Like we have no judgment about that. It just tells us where your priorities are, so we can help you move towards those priorities. Your priorities are what they are.
Yeah.
And what do you value? Okay, cool. How do we move towards more of that for you?
Yeah. So I think that's why I told them there's homework to do. Because we don't want to make up any numbers of your living expenses. I tell them even your guesstimate is probably better than mine, because you can always look at your annual statement of your credit card and come up with what the total is.
Right. I love that.
Because in the end, hey, that's the number we don't want to make up. And we already have made many assumptions about rate of return, the risk profile, and inflation, and longevity, like your life expectancy, just based on talking to them and just looking at them, right? Living expenses is their homework.
Yeah,
to us, that's the homework. You must begin the relationship.
Yeah, I won't do a tax plan without understanding where they put their personal dollars.
Yeah,
beyond the business, because maybe that's incongruent with what they're telling me they want. You know, like there's so many data points with dollars, with what you do with your dollars. You know, money's energy. I firmly believe that, and we put our money where we want to put it, whether good or bad. And again, no judgment around what you do with your money, for your benefit or not for your benefit. It tells us what you value, and that, you know, it's just data points. And I think people don't, and that's why the cash flow stuff is so important. So cash is king. What do you need your cash for? How do we get to more of it? But if we know what you want it for, we can help you get it in the way that makes the most sense for you.
Yeah, I think it's personal. Personal financial planning is definitely personal. That's why I have to tell them right from the beginning, you know, hey, maybe nobody has asked you these questions before. And I'm probably the first one.
Yeah. And that's why I like when I get a generic tax question, I'm like, I don't know. That depends on so many factors.
Yeah.
Set up a time because it's personal. It's personalized.
Yeah.
Awesome. So before I ask you our final question, what is the easiest way to find you?
I would encourage you to visit my personal website. That's ownyourfuture.guru. So Own Your Future is the title of the book. Guru is GURU. Because I want to be a financial guru for many people. And from there, you can purchase the book on Amazon. And I believe the book has received more than 50 very positive reviews. And people can connect with me on all the social media, Facebook, LinkedIn,
Love it.
Instagram, and Twitter, right from the website, ownyourfuture.guru.
I love it. Thank you. And congratulations on the book. I know when we originally talked, you're like, the book's coming. And I was like, yes, I love it.
Yeah, it was definitely challenging to, there was no book launching party or anything. But as we all know, people are spending a lot more time on their computer. And one way to do it is try to spread the message using a podcast like yours, and also just talk to people and use digital marketing. And I certainly hope more people connect with me, or if I cannot be their financial advisor, I certainly can point to the right places for them to search for the right one.
I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's just important for me to help more people out there. And I think writing a book is one way to get the lessons learned out there.
So good. I love it. So final question for you. What is the one financial move every person needs to make sure that they have figured out or completed?
Wow. One financial move. As you can see, I have so many on the
I know you do.
Here.
What's your number one?
Number one, everybody needs to have specific budget they are going to stick with. Understanding how much they are saving for their future. I think that's probably most important, because that would help you live below your means. Pay yourself first on your budget, meaning that for various goals, you understand why you go to work, because you want the money work harder than you are someday. So in order to do that, you actually have to save first. So I would have to say everyone need to figure out a specific amount of money they need to save and invest for their future by creating a budget that they are going to stick with.
I love it. Thank you so much, Echo.
You're very welcome.
Thank you so much for listening or watching. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, or wherever you prefer to listen. If you learned something and found some useful information to apply to your business today, please consider giving us a thumbs up and a review. Until next week, be abundant.